Numerous studies have been made to try and understand the pictorial technique and material used by Caravaggio in the executions of his paintings. The artist has left nothing in writing, and the testimonies of his contemporaries are scarce and imprecise regarding the procedure he adopted to complete his work. We know, however, that Caravaggio loved to paint from the model, that he used a studio with light coming from the above, and that he was very fast. He could paint up to 3 heads in a single day. There are no unfinished paintings which remained in an intermediate work phase from which it would have been possible to trace, at least in part, the various work phases, but there are figures in some of his later paintings left by the painter in an incomplete state of work. Based on this, of the few but precious tests carried out, on the numerous and accurate scientific investigations, as well as on the careful study of the overlapping of the layers of color, we will try to retrace the entire pictorial process of Caravaggio. The supports are always in canvas, linen, thick and sparse, on average 12 by 12 threads per square centimeter. The preparation is dark, oily, a primer with oil and pigment, mostly earth, with the addition of lead white and plaster. Sometimes there is also sand in the dough. Much importance is given by the artist to the color of the mistica, not only because it influences the finished work, but also because, often, Caravaggio kept large areas of it visible without painting on it, or perhaps by only spreading a light glaze over it. The cardinal points of the compositional system were quickly fixed with freehand incisions directly on the preparation. From the signs detectable of his works, however, it is understood that these may not have been a sufficient guide for the painting. More likely, they seem to be, as intuited by Roberto Longhi in the 1950s, references to put the model back into position in order to find, at each session, the right pose. It is practically an exclusive procedure of this artist, who probably developed starting from the technique of carrying over the drawing by cardboard. The sources say that Caravaggio did not draw but painted directly from reality without going through an elaborated and studied drawing, as wanted by a consolidated artistic tradition at the time. In practice, the artist drew by painting. The work is in fact done in a jet and modified during the execution. He began by creating a graphic layout with burnt shadow earth. Recent investigations carried out on the Cena in Emmaus, preserved in the Pinacoteca di Brera, seem to contradict the historical sources that the painter did not resort to the preliminary graphic phase. The infrared multispectral scanner revealed, in addition to the presence of the typical engravings, the graphic contours of the hands, the face of Christ, and the apostles. Through the infrared reflectography, in many of the artist's work, in some cases, drawing traces are visible to the naked eye, such as the margins of the Giuditta of the National Gallery of Ancient Art in Rome, where it is easy to distinguish the subtle, dark strokes of the outline. On the graphic of the shady ground, not yet dry, Caravaggio began to paint with quick and loose brushstrokes, but at the same time strong and full. The preliminary drawing thus came to be one with the sketch. According to the testimony of Pietro Bellori, Caravaggio left the priming of the canvas in half shades. That is, he used the brown color of the preparation as a half tone for the dimness. The lead white in the light areas of the complexion is applied in increasingly lighter tones, up to the final touches made with pure white. In radiographs, a spiral pattern of white brushstrokes is often observed. If the contemporary painters of Caravaggio made a body sketch on which they then spread glazes to finish it, Caravaggio revolutionized the techniques by completing his paintings part by part in a single session. The glazes are spread without allowing the underlying color to dry completely, so that the two pictorial surfaces are mixed together. Already at the sketch level, painting appears so defined and studied in every detail. That is, the painting is built with the paste of color and not by layers. Thus, the body netting technique was born, which then remained typical of many areas of the Mediterranean. The full-bodied workmanship of the sketches, whose brushstrokes rich in pictorial mix, fast, moving and not always corresponding to the final draft, as well as the speed of execution, depended on the habit and willingness to copy from the model. Pigments. The coloring material used by Caravaggio are relatively few. His palette is based on lead white, yellow, and red ochre, cinnabar, copper green, charcoal black, earth. The use of bright and decisive colors found in his youthful works seemed to diminish in the painting of late maturity, in which dark and muted shades predominate and earth-based colors appear. Still, Bellori informs us that the painter used a more dyed color, all affected by vigorous shadows, using much black to emphasize the bodies. Uncovered strip. Typical of the artist, the process of leaving exposed around the complexions an uncovered strips of preparation that reveals its reddish-brown color. This can be explained by the very rapid execution, that is, to proceed quickly without waiting for the contiguous area to be dry. This procedure is certainly linked to the practice of painting from natural with the model in front. The rapid final draft went just beyond the sketch or even identified with it, so much that egg tempera highlights were superimposed on the still fresh oil layers. The egg tempera, found in some of the artist's work, allows to intervene on the still fresh color without melting the layers. This seems to confirm that more often Caravaggio did not put his hand back to the painted part, and all this appears in line with the use of the model. The energy and the decision of the artist's brushstrokes were reconciled with an extraordinary attention to the smallest details, painted with a small brush. The artist's finished work was limited to small touches such as revising the features of the faces with black. Caravaggio did not cut his figures within well-defined profiles, but he did them in full starting from the bottom and then superimposing those in the foreground. Figures, clothes, and objects are built in succession of often overlap, like the foreheads of the faces covered by hair, or the arms outlined in full and later covered by the cloaks or sleeves of the clothes. Scientific reproduction makes use of all available information obtained by the study of sources, treatises, testimonies, ancient cookbooks. Informations extracted from restoration reports, often accompanied by diagnostic tests, aim at understanding the execution technique. And finally, the information obtained from the careful observation of the works preserved, in particular those left unfinished by the painter, but also those on which interventions of careless restoration occurred in the past, have highlighted layers of material originally hidden from view. It is not possible for me to show the results of the comparison between the scientific reproductions shown here with the radiographic or cross-sections investigation of the original work, as at present the rights of the latter do not allow it. But on one of the reproductions, a very aggressive cleaning operation was carried out in order to verify whether the progressive unveiling of the layers would have resulted in bringing our reproduction to a similar appearance to the original, which, as in the case of the painting depicting Sant'Ursula by shorthand of Caravaggio, has, in the past, undergone a similar treatment. If not a verification of the correctness of the methods followed during the scientific reproductions of the work, this procedure could shed light on some aspects still discussed of the artist's way of proceeding.